When Tiger Woods pulled up to a red light on a quiet Los Angeles street, he barely noticed the figures huddled on the sidewalk. His mind was elsewhere. Flashes of applause, the weight of a trophy, the familiar smell of fresh-cut grass from the charity golf event he had just left. He exhaled, hands resting on the wheel. Life was good. Life was controlled, until his eyes landed on a figure slumped against a bus stop. At first, it was just another homeless man, a bundle of torn fabric, hunched shoulders, a face hidden beneath layers of grime and exhaustion. But then something caught Tiger's attention. A familiar tilt of the head, a flicker of recognition buried beneath years of hardship. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. No. It couldn't be. The light turned green. Horns blared behind him, but Tiger didn't move. His pulse pounded in his ears. His mouth felt dry. The man lifted his head slightly, revealing hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and a thick beard that barely masked the unmistakable features beneath. David, his childhood best friend. The shock hit like a 9-iron to the chest. His breath caught. How? How was this possible? The last time he had seen David, they had been kids, swinging clubs at the local golf course, dreaming of the future. David had talent, raw, effortless talent. He was supposed to make it. Tiger pulled the car over, hands trembling as he threw it into park. He stepped out, heart racing, stepping toward the bus stop as if walking through a dream. David? His voice cracked. The man flinched but didn't look up. Tiger swallowed hard. David. It's me. Tiger. Slowly, David's eyes flickered up, dull and unfocused. For a brief second, something sparked in them. Then it was gone. His body stiffened, as if bracing for a blow. Tiger? The name came out hoarse, as if it didn't belong to him anymore. Tiger felt a lump rise in his throat. His best friend, once full of life, full of promise, was now sitting on a cold sidewalk, lost to the world. But why? What had happened? David's gaze darted around nervously before he muttered, "You shouldn't be here." Tiger barely had time to process the words before David abruptly stood, clutching his ragged coat, and turned to walk away. Tiger instinctively reached out to stop him, but froze as David flinched, as if expecting to be hit. Something was very, very wrong. Tiger's heart raced as he watched David walk away, each step heavier than the last. His best friend was slipping through his fingers, disappearing into the shadows of a life Tiger couldn't even begin to comprehend. He stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. The man he had known, laughing, talking about their dreams and golf courses and the future, was now a ghost of his former self, wandering aimlessly. Without thinking, Tiger jogged after him. "David!" he called, his voice sharp with urgency. "Wait!" David's pace quickened. His back stiffened, and he didn't turn around. "I told you, don't follow me," David muttered, his voice almost unrecognizable. "You don't understand. You can't." Tiger reached out to touch his shoulder, but as soon as his fingers brushed the fabric of David's jacket, the man jerked away like he had been burned. "David!" Tiger said, his voice pleading now. "What's going on? What happened to you?" David's body trembled, but he didn't look at him. "Nothing's happened. You're the one who's changed," he said coldly. "Just leave me alone, Tiger. I don't need your help." Tiger stood there, stunned, as David continued to shuffle away. There was something in his tone, in his movements, something that screamed of a man trapped in a cage he couldn't escape. David's refusal to meet his eyes was enough. It wasn't just that he was homeless. It was the fear in him, the hesitation to let Tiger close. There was something deeper going on, something far more dangerous than Tiger had ever imagined. The last time Tiger had seen David was before everything had started to fall apart, back when they'd shared their dreams together, back when the world had seemed full of endless possibilities. But now, David suddenly stopped, his body stiff. The air around them felt tense. Tiger could feel the knot tightening in his stomach. Something was wrong. David turned slowly. His eyes locked on Tiger's with a strange, haunted expression. "I can't talk about it," he said, his voice low. "You don't want to know what I've gotten involved in. I'm not who you think I am anymore." Tiger's chest tightened. He had no idea what David was talking about, but he could see it in his eyes. Before Tiger could respond, David took a step back, his hand outstretched in a gesture of warning. "You have to walk away, Tiger. You have no idea how deep this goes." And then, in a blur, David disappeared around the corner, leaving Tiger standing there, the cold air biting at his skin. What was David involved in? And more importantly, was it too late to save him? Tiger spent the next few days in a daze, the image of David's broken face haunting him with every passing minute. The more he tried to understand what had happened, the more the mystery deepened. The next morning, Tiger couldn't shake the feeling that he had to know more. He needed answers. David's refusal to talk, his cold demeanor, and his cryptic warning had only fueled his determination. Tiger wasn't about to let his childhood friend spiral deeper into whatever nightmare had taken hold of him. Tiger's first stop was David's old apartment, the one they used to hang out in during their high school days. It had been a few years since he had been there, but he still remembered the way the old building smelled, musty, with a hint of faded memories. The place was empty, the door barely hanging on its hinges. He knocked anyway, just in case someone else had moved in, but there was no answer. The hallway looked the same, quiet, lifeless, but something was missing. The energy of youth, the feeling of home, was long gone. Frustrated, Tiger decided to take a different approach. He remembered an old friend of David's, a mutual acquaintance from their youth, Sarah, who had been close to him even after they drifted apart. Tiger found her contact number in his phone, took a deep breath, and dialed. "Hello?" Sarah's voice answered, weary but warm. "Sarah, it's Tiger," he said. "I need to talk to you about David. I'm really worried about him." There was a long pause on the other end. "Tiger, I don't know if you're going to like what you hear," she finally said. "David's in deep, man. He's been in some bad stuff, gambling, drugs. But it's not just that. There's something darker going on." Tiger's heart raced. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Sarah sighed. "I don't know all the details, but I know he owes a lot of people money. Dangerous people. People you don't want to mess with. He was doing fine, working odd jobs, staying clean for a while, but then he got mixed up in a shady deal, Tiger. A deal that went south." "Who did he get involved with?" Tiger asked, his voice tight with concern. "I don't know their names," Sarah replied. "But I know this. They've been after him for months. They've made threats. I've seen him get scared, Tiger. He's not the same person anymore. Whatever's happened to him, it's big. It's like he's trapped and he can't get out." The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. Tiger couldn't believe what he was hearing, but it made sense. The fear in David's eyes, the hesitation to trust him. It wasn't just a breakdown, it was something far worse. "Where is he now?" Tiger asked, his voice urgent. "I don't know, Tiger. He's been laying low," Sarah said. I haven't heard from him in a few days, but he's running out of time." Tiger's heart sank. He had to find David before it was too late. He thanked Sarah quickly and hung up, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't do this alone. David was in over his head, tangled in something dangerous, and Tiger was the only one who might be able to pull him out. As he paced the floor of his hotel room, his mind flashed back to the warning David had given him. "You don't want to know what I've gotten involved in." What if it was already too late to fix? Tiger grabbed his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. "I need help," he said, his voice firm with determination. "It's about David. I need you to find something for me." The line went quiet for a moment before the voice on the other end responded. "You're sure you want to get involved in this? You're risking more than you think." Tiger's grip tightened on the phone. "I don't care. I need to know everything." The days after his phone call were a blur. Tiger couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. David had vanished, slipping further into the darkness of whatever dangerous game he had gotten tangled in. Tiger couldn't stop thinking about the cryptic words Sarah had said. "He's running out of time." The more he tried to piece together the broken fragments of David's life, the more Tiger realized just how deep this went. There was something more than addiction or bad luck at play. David was being hunted by someone or something far worse than Tiger had ever imagined. Tiger's contacts were pulling strings, trying to get any lead they could. After reaching out to a few old friends who worked in law enforcement, he got a piece of vital information, a name that David had been associated with in recent months, a man named Carter Hines. Hines was known in certain circles as a fixer, someone who could solve problems for the right price, at any cost. Tiger's stomach churned as he pieced together the puzzle. It wasn't just bad luck or poor choices that had derailed David's life. Hines was using David, exploiting him for something sinister, and now it seemed like it was a matter of time before things turned deadly. Tiger drove across town, heading to a seedy part of LA where Hines had a few connections. The area was dark, dimly lit by flickering streetlights, a place where hope seemed to have long disappeared. He parked a few blocks away from a dilapidated building, its windows cracked and covered with grime. His pulse quickened as he approached the entrance. The air smelled like stale smoke and burnt rubber. Tiger could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just a search for his old friend anymore. This was about stepping into a world he had never wanted to touch, one where every corner was filled with shadows and danger. As he entered the building, a sense of foreboding gripped him. The dimly lit hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly. He knew this was a place where people came to disappear, and where people didn't ask too many questions. A figure stepped from the shadows. Carter Hines. The man's eyes narrowed as he sized Tiger up, clearly evaluating whether this was a game he wanted to play. "Tiger Woods," Hines said in a gravelly voice. "I didn't expect to see you here." Tiger didn't flinch. He'd dealt with people like Hines before, people who thought they could intimidate others with power or threats, but Tiger wasn't backing down, not now. "I'm looking for David," Tiger said, his voice sharp. "You've been involved with him. Where is he?" Hines's smirk faded for a moment. His eyes flicked to the side as though contemplating how much to reveal. "You don't want to get mixed up in this, Woods," Hines warned. "David's in deeper than you think. I'm just a part of the bigger picture. Let it go before you make things worse for him. And for yourself." Tiger took a step closer, narrowing his gaze. "I don't care about the picture, Carter. Where is he?" For a moment, Hines remained silent, his expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, he spoke. "He's with them now. The people he's really in debt to. You're too late, Woods. They're not interested in a simple payday. David's life is collateral." The words hit Tiger like a slap. David wasn't just running from some bad decisions. He was caught in a web of ruthless people, people who played for keeps, Hines continued. "But if you want him, you're going to have to go through them. They don't just let people walk away, not without a price. And right now, Tiger, you're asking for a price that even you might not be able to pay." Tiger's fists clenched at his sides. David had made it this far, and Tiger wasn't going to back down now. He took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside him. He could feel the weight of the moment, the pressure of knowing he was about to make a decision that could change everything. "Tell me where he is," Tiger repeated, this time with a steely determination. Hines looked around nervously, as if deciding whether to trust Tiger or not. Finally, he leaned in, his voice low. "I'm not doing this for free, Woods. You get me the right cut and I'll tell you everything, but the clock's ticking, and you're running out of time." Tiger nodded, his mind already racing. Whatever it took, he would find David and he would bring him back, even if it meant stepping into a war zone where every wrong move could cost him everything. The next day, Tiger couldn't sleep. Every moment spent without answers only made him more determined to find David and bring him back from the edge. He had no idea what Hines was playing at, but he knew one thing for sure. David was in the hands of people who had no mercy. He called in every favor, reaching out to the few trusted friends left in his circle. But when it came down to it, Tiger knew he was alone in this fight. The game was bigger than golf now. And this time, it wasn't about winning a tournament. It was about saving a life. The hours seemed to drag on as he waited for a call back. He couldn't shake the feeling that the clock was ticking louder with each passing second. Then, just as the sun began to set, his phone rang. It was a private number. Tiger answered without hesitation. "This is Woods." "Tiger, it's Sarah. I found something. You need to meet me now." Her voice was shaky, full of urgency. "I know where David is." His heart skipped a beat. "Where?" "There's a warehouse on the outskirts of town," Sarah said. "It's where they've been holding him. You need to hurry. It's bad, Tiger. I've seen the men who are with him. They're not playing around." Tiger didn't waste another second. He was out the door, his mind racing. The darkened streets of LA felt colder than usual, the city now a jungle, and he was deep within it. He arrived at the location Sarah had given him, an industrial part of town where the lights were dim and the air reeked of oil and rust. He parked his car behind a cluster of empty dumpsters and crept toward the entrance of the warehouse, his heart pounding in his chest. The windows were barred, but he could make out shadows moving inside. David was there. Tiger didn't hesitate. He pulled the door open just enough to slip inside, careful not to make a sound. The inside was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of machinery in the background. His eyes scanned the room, desperate for any sign of David. And then he saw him. David was slumped against a metal pillar, bruised and bloodied, his clothes torn. His eyes were vacant, as though the fight had left him long ago. Two men stood guard nearby, talking in low voices. Tiger took a breath, his instincts kicking in. He couldn't wait any longer. He wasn't going to lose David. Tiger moved quickly, silently. He grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and approached the first guard, swinging it with precision. The guard crumpled to the floor without a sound. The second man didn't even have time to react before Tiger knocked him out as well, sending him into a heap on the concrete floor. David's head jerked up at the noise, his eyes wide with confusion. He struggled to sit up, his hands shaking. "Tiger?" Tiger dropped the pipe, rushing over to his friend. "David, you're okay. I'm here. We're getting out of here. David shook his head weakly. It's too late, Tiger. They won't let me go. It's over. No, it's not, Tiger said firmly, lifting him up. We're leaving now. David tried to protest, but his body seemed to give out. He collapsed against Tiger's chest, barely able to stand. As Tiger helped David out the door, a sound echoed behind them. Footsteps. The men were waking up, and there was no way they were letting Tiger and David walk out of there without a fight. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Tiger's heart raced. He knew they didn't have much time. He had to get David out of there, now. With David leaning heavily on him, Tiger moved quickly but cautiously, his mind calculating their escape route. The warehouse was like a maze, with narrow hallways and dark corners, but Tiger's instincts were sharp. He pushed David forward, urging him to keep going despite his weakening state. Come on, David, Tiger said through clenched teeth. We're almost there. You have to hold on. David nodded weakly, but his breaths were shallow, each step seeming more difficult than the last. Tiger knew he couldn't carry him much longer. His body was tired from the adrenaline and the fight, but he couldn't stop now, not when David was this close to being free. As they neared the exit, the screech of a door opening echoed through the warehouse. They weren't alone. Tiger turned just in time to see two more men rushing toward them, guns drawn. His pulse quickened. They were cornered. David, too weak to move on his own, was practically dragging Tiger down. This was it. Tiger stepped in front of David instinctively, positioning himself as a shield. The men came closer. The guns aimed at them both. Tiger's mind raced, trying to find any way out. There had to be something. He couldn't lose David, not now, not after everything they had been through. A sharp voice shouted from behind them. Freeze! Before Tiger could react, a figure appeared in the doorway, a familiar face. Sarah. With a steady hand, she held up her own gun, aimed squarely at the two men. Drop your weapons, she commanded, her voice calm and unwavering. The men hesitated, but it was all the time Tiger needed. He turned back to David, pulling him toward the door. Come on, we're going, now! As the two men hesitated, Sarah took a step forward. I said drop it! The men exchanged a glance, then reluctantly complied, their weapons hitting the ground with a loud clatter. Sarah advanced, keeping her gun trained on them, and the pair backed away slowly, disappearing into the shadows from where they came. Tiger and David stood in the doorway, their breaths heavy, as Sarah lowered her weapon. We're not out of the woods yet, Sarah said, her voice tight. They'll come after you, Tiger, after both of you. Tiger nodded, knowing she was right. But at that moment, all he could focus on was David, his friend, his brother, the person who had meant everything to him growing up. He had saved him. But the cost was still unclear. As they walked out into the cool night air, Tiger couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. They had escaped, but how long would they be safe? The silence of the night was broken by the sound of a car engine starting in the distance. Someone was coming, and this time it wasn't just a rescue. It was a war that neither of them was ready for.